Have you ever noticed that the desperation of not having a car sometimes hurts less than the fear of having one? It sounds strange to say that, but think about it honestly with me. When you don't have a car, the problem is clear, visible, almost obvious. You take the bus, ask for a ride, call a rideshare, and complain about life. But when you buy a car, especially when you're not fully financially stable, yet a different kind of anxiety is born. It's quieter, more constant, and it starts following you every single day. The payment comes due, the insurance bill arrives, maintenance shows up out of nowhere, property taxes hit like a weight at the beginning of the year, and you begin to feel like any unexpected expense could snowball. Maybe you're exactly at that point right now. Maybe you're tired of depending on other people, tired of crowded public transportation, tired of feeling like your life isn't moving forward because you don't have a car. And at the same time, you look at your bank balance and feel that tightness in your chest, that doubt no one can solve for you. Buy or lease financed it and take on the commitment, or pay monthly without owning anything in the end. On deep though, what hurts isn't just the financial decision. It's the fear of getting it wrong. It's the fear of committing to something that might trap you. It's the fear of staying stuck. There's an emotional layer here that almost no one talks about. When you don't have a car, you feel the lack of freedom. But when you take on a car that's bigger than your reality can support, you trade that lack of freedom for a constant fear of losing control. What starts as a dream turns into a daily source of worry. You begin calculating everything. What if the car breaks down? What if you lose your job? What if your income drops? What if an emergency comes up? Suddenly, the car that symbolized progress becomes a responsibility heavier than you imagined. And here's something few people realize. It's not about the car. It's about emotional stability. It's about how your brain reacts when you take on a high fixed commitment every month, an obligation you can't simply ignore. There's a survival mode inside us that switches on automatically when fixed expenses get too high. You stop working to grow and start working just not to lose. You start making decisions out of fear. And when we live in fear, clarity disappears. Maybe you've felt this in another situation before, when your credit card balance got too high, when rent felt overwhelming, when you realized you had no margin for error. A car can be exactly that. A decision that seems practical but deeply affects your sense of security. And here's a question no one may have asked you. Do you want to have a car, or do you want to feel in control of your life? Because sometimes we confuse the two. The truth is, buying a car can be wonderful when it fits your reality. But when it doesn't, it becomes a monthly reminder that you're always at the limit. And living at the limit is exhausting. It exhausts your mind. It exhausts your body. It exhausts your relationships. It exhausts your self-esteem. You start wondering why you work so hard and still never feel like there's anything left over. And the car, which was supposed to be an achievement, becomes just another line on your list of worries. Now let's talk about the other side, which isn't simple either. Leasing or renting a car can feel like throwing money away. You pay and end up with nothing. You feel like you're building someone else's asset. It never truly feels like yours. And that messes with your head too, because we were taught that owning is better than using. That possession equals security. That renting means you're behind. And maybe you're even embarrassed to admit you're considering this option because you feel like you should be buying. But here's something important that almost no one teaches. Sometimes paying for use is paying for peace of mind. When you lease or rent, maintenance isn't your concern. Depreciation isn't your problem. Unexpected mechanical issues don't come out of your pocket without warning. You trade the feeling of ownership for predictability. And predictability calms the brain. When you know exactly how much will come out, each month no surprises, your mind shifts out of alert mode and into rational mode. You start making decisions more clearly. Still, this decision isn't pure math. It's not a simple calculation of which option is cheaper. It's about your stage of life. It's about how much fixed commitment you can handle. It's about how stable or unstable your income is. It's about how mentally exhausted you already are. Because when we're already emotionally at our limit, any extra obligation feels twice as heavy. Maybe what's happening isn't really doubt about a car. Maybe it's fear of always being behind. Fear of watching others move forward while you're still deciding. Fear of making the wrong choice and regretting it for years. And that fear paralyzes you. You research, compare, make spreadsheets, ask friends, watch videos. But deep down the decision doesn't move forward because it isn't just rational. It's emotional. There's an invisible line between a decision that strengthens you and one that suffocates you. That line isn't in the car's price. It's in your financial margin and, more importantly, your mental margin. If the car will steal your peace, it's too expensive, even if the payment fits on paper. If leasing will leave you constantly feeling wasteful and guilty, maybe that's not the right choice either. The real question is, which option gives you more control and less fear? And here's something that might sting but needs to be said. Many people buy a car not because they need one, but because they want to prove they want to feel like they've finally made it somewhere. They want to escape the silent feeling of failure. But using a long-term commitment as proof of success is dangerous, because success isn't what you show in your driveway. It's how well you sleep at night. Maybe what you're looking for is independence. Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's recognition. But if you don't address the root of your financial insecurity, any decision becomes just another attempt to fill a void. And a car doesn't solve the fear of running out of money. It can even make it worse. There's a scene almost no one talks about when they talk about buying a car. It's that night after you've bought it, signed the papers, left the dealership happy, posted a photo, received congratulations, and then a few days later you lie in bed and mentally calculate everything that now depends on you. The payment, insurance, gas, maintenance, the tire replacement that will eventually come, and for the first time you realize it's not just a car, it's a fixed commitment that will follow you for years. It's not that you regret it immediately, it's more subtle than that. It's a light tension that starts living inside you. A worry that appears when your paycheck hits and you already know a big part of it isn't really yours anymore. It's the feeling that you can't mess up now. You can't get sick. You can't lose income. You can't have a weak month, because now there's something too big to carry lightly. Many people don't realize that when fixed expenses grow too much, freedom shrinks in the same proportion. You start accepting situations you might not have accepted before. You stay in a job that no longer makes sense because you can't risk it. You avoid moving cities. You avoid trying something new. The car that symbolized movement becomes the reason you stay stuck. And here's something almost no one admits. The fear of losing hurts more than the initial lack. When you don't have a car, you feel the absence. But when you have one and realize you might not be able to keep it, the fear is much greater. It's as if now you have something to lose, and our brains hate losing. The pain of loss is more intense than the pleasure of gain. So instead of feeling proud of the achievement, you start feeling afraid you won't be able to sustain it. That changes how you deal with money. You become more rigid, more anxious, more tense about every expense. A dinner becomes guilt. New clothes feel excessive. A small, unexpected cost feels like a threat. And without noticing, your life starts revolving around maintaining what you committed to. Now look at the other side, the person who chooses to lease or rent. They think, I don't want to be tied down. I want predictability. I want to be able to return it if I need to. At first, they're even relief. No long-term financing. No worry about resale value. No mechanical surprises. It feels light. It feels smart. But after a few months, another inner voice appears, the one that asks, and in the end, what do I actually have? It feels like the money leaves every month and builds nothing visible. Then comes the quiet comparison with friends who bought. You see pictures of my car, conversations about ownership, and deep down there's a feeling that you're always renting and life always using, never owning. See how both choices touch the same core? Security and identity. It's not just transportation. It's about who you believe you are. It's about feeling behind or moving forward. It's about proving something to yourself. But there's a deeper question almost no one asks before deciding, what's the current state of your life? Is your income predictable? Are you already living at the edge? Are you mentally exhausted? Because when your mind is already full of worry, any big decision multiplies the weight. If you already wake up thinking about bills, already feel like money comes in and disappears too fast, maybe the issue isn't choosing between buying or leasing. Maybe the issue is trying to solve a feeling of stagnation with a decision that creates even more pressure. There's a huge difference between wanting a car because it makes your routine easier and wanting a car because you want to feel like you've finally made it. When the motivation is to improve your routine, the decision tends to be lighter. When the motivation is to prove your worth, the decision comes loaded with expectation. And high expectation combined with a tight budget is a dangerous mix. I've seen people finance cars at the limit and spend years afraid of any unusual engine noise. Any dashboard light almost triggered anxiety. I've seen people lease for a while, organize their lives, build margin, and then buy with peace of mind. And I've also seen the opposite. People who lease for years never built savings, never got organized, and felt like they were always moving but never arriving. So notice something important. A car doesn't fix disorganization. A car doesn't create stability. It amplifies what's already there. If you already have control, it can be a tool. If you're already living at the edge, it becomes a stress amplifier. Maybe what's holding you back is this feeling of always being behind as if everyone else is moving forward while you're still deciding. Decisions made in a rush just to keep up usually cost a lot, and not just financially. They cost peace. Now I want to go deeper into something delicate but necessary. The difference between a payment that fits and a payment that hurts. Because many people look only at the number on paper and ignore the emotional impact. And that changes everything in practice. There's a quiet difference between a payment that fits on paper and one that fits in your mind. Almost no one talks about this, honestly, because on paper, many things seem possible. But in real life, the calculation isn't made only with numbers. It's made with a sense of security, with breathing room, with space to make mistakes. You look at your income, subtract fixed expenses, see that technically the payment fits, and think it's doable that you just need to get more organized, cut a few things, be more disciplined. But life isn't made of perfect months. There's always the month when something goes off track. There's always the unexpected cost that wasn't in the spreadsheet. And when you take on something that consumes almost all your margin, any small mistake becomes a big problem. That's when the silent wear and tear begins. You start living in a state of alert. Every expense becomes an analysis. Every outing becomes a calculation. Every end of the month becomes tension. And the worst part isn't the amount itself, it's the constant feeling of being at the limit. It's waking up knowing that before you even live the month. A large part of your effort is already committed. That changes how you work, how you think, how you react to problems. You realize you're no longer working to grow, you're working to maintain. And maintaining is more exhausting than growing. Growth excites you. Maintenance drains you, because maintenance demands constant vigilance. It requires that nothing go wrong. And when your financial life depends on nothing going wrong, you never truly relax. Now think about something you may never have put into words. When you have a small savings cushion, you fear losing it. But when you have no margin at all, you live in survival mode all the time. What truly brings clarity isn't owning the car, leasing the car, or even the size of the payment. It's having mental space. It's having breathing room. It's knowing that if something happens, you can absorb it without falling apart. The problem is that many times the car decision happens before that breathing room is built. You want to solve today's discomfort, but you create a bigger discomfort tomorrow. You want to stop depending on others, but you end up depending even more on the stability of your income. And if your income already fluctuates, if you already count the days until payday, taking on a high fixed commitment can be like adding more weight to someone who's already tired. On the other hand, if you choose to lease just because you're afraid of commitment, but you don't use that time to get organized, you can fall into another trap, living in constant postponement, always feeling temporary, always waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. And that also creates anxiety, because you start wondering whether you're avoiding responsibility or being prudent, and that constant doubt wears you down too. See how there's no ready-made answer? There's context, there's timing, there's emotional structure. Buying can be liberating when you have margin and clarity. Leasing can be strategic when you want predictability while organizing your life, but any choice made just to relieve immediate emotional pain without looking at the foundation of your reality tends to become a source of regret. Maybe the question you should be asking isn't which one is cheaper, but which decision helps me sleep better, because sleeping peacefully is worth more than saving a little on paper. If you buy and spend years afraid of losing your job, the real price may be too high. If you lease and live constantly comparing yourself and feeling lesser, you may also be paying an emotional cost that's too high. There is a turning point in financial life that almost no one notices. It's when you stop deciding based on impulse or comparison and start deciding based on structure. Structure means having margin. It means having savings. It means the car stops being a solution for self-esteem and becomes a mobility tool. When you reach that point, the decision becomes simpler because you're not trying to prove anything to anyone. And maybe what's missing right now isn't car ownership or a lease contract. Maybe what's missing is basic organization that gives you the security to choose without fear. Maybe what's missing is looking honestly at your income. Maybe what's missing is admitting that you're more mentally tired than you'd like to admit. So let's talk about what almost no one has the courage to face before making a big decision. the real state of your financial life, not what you wish you were, not what you show other people, but what it truly is when you close your bedroom door and sit alone with your thoughts. Because many times the desire to buy a car doesn't come from practical need. It comes from the feeling of being stuck, from looking at your own life and feeling like nothing changes, from working every day, trying hard, getting tired, and at the end of the month still being in the same place. The car appears as a symbol of progress as if it were proof that you're moving forward. But a symbol doesn't fix a weak foundation. If today you already feel like money comes in and disappears too quickly, if any unexpected event throws everything off, if you constantly feel one step behind, taking on a high fixed commitment won't solve that. It will only increase the pressure. It's like trying to run faster while carrying extra weight. And here's something that may be uncomfortable to hear. Many people want to buy a car before building minimum stability. They want to accelerate before learning how to maintain a steady pace. They want to own before organizing. And when they do that, the car becomes a monthly reminder that the foundation wasn't ready. Building control doesn't start with choosing between buying or leasing. It starts with creating margin. Margin is what's left after you pay everything and can still breathe. It's not a tight leftover. It's not something that depends on a perfect month. It's a real surplus. It's knowing that if something goes wrong, you can absorb it. And I know you might be thinking, if I wait for the perfect margin, I'll never do anything. And you're partly right. There's no perfect moment. But there's a difference between taking a calculated step and making a leap in the dark. The problem isn't commitment. The problem is committing at the limit. Now think about something simple. If today you had savings covering a few months of your life, would the decision feel different? Probably yes, because you wouldn't be deciding out of fear. You'd be deciding from structure. And when we decide from structure, anxiety decreases. There's a mental shift that completely transforms this kind of choice. It's when you stop asking, can I afford it? And start asking, can I afford it without feeling pressured? It sounds like a small detail, but it isn't. The first question is mathematical. The second is emotional. And money is emotional all the time. If the car payment will force you to say no to every small pleasure, if it will make you irritated over minor expenses, if it will create constant guilt, then the price is too high for your current stage. If leasing will leave you with a constant feeling of being behind, maybe you need to work on the emotional foundation first. Maybe what's missing isn't the car. Maybe it's simple, clear organization. Knowing exactly how much comes in, knowing exactly how much goes out, building a small cushion, testing for a few months what it would feel like to live with that amount set aside before truly committing. That changes everything. You can simulate the payment before buying. You can set aside the amount as if you were already paying. If after a few months you realize it didn't affect your peace of mind, maybe you're more prepared than you think. But if you feel suffocated just in the simulation, that's already your answer. Better to discover it before than after. What almost no one understands is that the ultimate goal isn't to have a car. It's to have mental freedom. It's to look at your bills without feeling tightness in your chest. It's not waking up in the middle of the night wondering if you'll be able to pay. The car should serve your life. Your life shouldn't serve the car. And when you start seeing it this way, the decision stops being about status or comparison. It becomes strategy. It becomes logistics. It becomes organization. And when it becomes logistics, the emotional weight decreases a lot. So let's move to a point that completely changes the game, but almost no one sees it while stuck in the doubt between buying or leasing. The right decision isn't the one that looks bigger, it's the one that strengthens you internally. Because when you strengthen your structure, any choice feels lighter. But when you're financially and emotionally fragile, any decision feels like a threat. I want you to imagine two different people. The first finances a car at the limit of their income. They can make the payments. On paper, it makes sense. But every month is tight. Almost nothing is left over. Any unexpected expense creates tension. They start avoiding going out, getting irritated over small costs, feeling like they work only to keep bills up to date. The car is in the driveway, but peace isn't to inside them. The second person decides to wait a bit. They keep using public transportation, ride shares, or even short-term rentals when needed. But during that time, they build margin. They organize expenses. They learn where their money is going. They save a minimum amount for emergencies. Maybe it takes longer to buy. Maybe it takes longer to show progress. But when they do buy, the decision doesn't weigh on them. It doesn't suffocate. It doesn't scare them. Which one truly moved forward? We were conditioned to think progress is what shows on the outside, but real progress is what reduces fear on the inside. And here's something very important. If today you feel constant anxiety about money, the priority isn't taking on new large commitments. It's reducing tension. It's simplifying. It's creating minimum stability. Because when financial anxiety is high, your brain goes into survival mode. And in that mode, you don't decide with clarity. You decide to relieve immediate discomfort. And many large purchases happen exactly like that, as attempts to relieve an internal feeling of being behind. Maybe you're tired of feeling dependent. Maybe you're tired of waiting. Maybe you're comparing your life to friends who already own cars. But comparison is one of the biggest saboteurs of financial peace. You don't see the full reality of other people's lives. You don't know whether they're peaceful or as pressured as you would be. What you do know is your own reality. If today your income fluctuates, if you have no savings, if you already feel like you're counting every dollar at the end of the month, taking on a long-term payment can turn a manageable difficulty into a cycle of continuous stress. And that's not weakness. It's not being behind. It's maturity to recognize your own season. Now let me touch on something even deeper. Shame. Many people don't buy because they're afraid they won't be able to pay. But they also don't lease because they're ashamed of not having something of their own. They get stuck in the middle, suffering, afraid of looking unsuccessful, as if the type of contract you have defines your worth as a person. But a car doesn't define character. It doesn't define success. It doesn't define intelligence. What defines your financial future is your ability to make decisions that preserve your peace and increase your margin. Maybe the most honest question you can ask yourself today is, do I want this car because it makes my routine easier, or because I want to feel like I'm progressing? If it's about your routine, you can measure it. You can calculate it. You can test it. If it's about feeling a feeling of stagnation, no model will solve that. Because the problem isn't in the garage. It's in the foundation of your financial organization. And here's where the real shift begins. The mature choice isn't buying or leasing. It's using this doubt as a turning point to reorganize your financial life. Before deciding, you can look at your real expenses from the past few months without lying to yourself. Create a small emergency fund. Simulate the total cost of the car, not just the payment. Test for a few months as if you were already paying. Feel and practice how that affects your peace of mind. When you do this, the decision stops being impulse and becomes a natural consequence of your structure. And then something interesting happens. You don't decide out of fear. You decide with clarity. And when there's clarity, there isn't constant regret. There's conscious responsibility. Now I want to move into the final part of this transformation, where the car decision becomes a symbol of something bigger. The transition from a reactive financial life to a strategic, simple, controlled one. There's a very specific moment in anyone's life when they realize they can't stand living in constant firefighting mode anymore. They can't stand making financial decisions only when pressure builds. They can't stand choosing something big just because they're tired of feeling small. And maybe this car decision is pushing you exactly to that turning point because it exposes something you may have been avoiding, your relationship with stability. When you start organizing your life before deciding, something shifts inside you. You stop acting to relieve immediate discomfort and start acting to build security. And that completely transforms the weight of the choice. Because when you create margin, build a small financial cushion, spend a few months intentionally living below your income. You begin to feel something you didn't feel before, control. Control isn't having everything solved. Control is knowing you can handle what comes. It's not panicking over an unexpected expense. It's not feeling like any problem could collapse everything. And when you feel that the question buy or lease stops being dramatic, it becomes practical. You start seeing the car as a tool, not a symbol. And a tool should serve you, not dominate you. If buying is comfortable, you buy. If leasing makes more sense at the moment, you lease. But the decision doesn't come from fear. It comes from structure. Now think about something simple yet powerful. A car doesn't change your financial reality. It only amplifies what's already there. If you're already organized, it amplifies efficiency. If you're already at the limit, it amplifies tension. That's why so many people buy and never talk about the weight afterward, because the weight isn't in the object, it's in the foundation. Maybe what you're seeking through this decision is a feeling of progress, but real progress isn't accelerating. It's gaining stability before accelerating. It's building solid ground before pressing the gas pedal. It's knowing that if the ground shakes, you won't collapse. And here's something that may sound too simple, but changes lives. Before taking on any large commitment, strengthen the basics. Organize your fixed expenses. Cut what doesn't add value. Create a minimum safety fund. Learn to live a few months with light discipline, not as punishment, but as construction. When you do that, anxiety decreases. And when anxiety decreases, clarity appears. Most people try to solve financial anxiety with more consumption, but financial anxiety is solved with predictability and margin. And margin isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. If today you're afraid of running out of money, maybe the car isn't the priority. Maybe the priority is not feeling that constant fear anymore. Because nothing is worth more than sleeping peacefully. Nothing is worth more than not waking up in the middle of the night thinking about bills. And when you deeply understand that the decision stops being urgent, it becomes strategic, you realize you don't need to prove anything to anyone right now, that you can build at your own pace, that you can choose when you're ready. And you know what happens when you choose at the right moment? You don't feel guilt. You don't feel regret. You don't feel pressure. You feel secure. And security has no price. Maybe you started this video thinking the answer would be a calculation comparing numbers, showing which option is cheaper. But the truth is, the most important question was never about the car. It was about your emotional and financial structure. It was about being tired of living at the limit. It was about wanting to stop feeling behind. And if there's a real transformation here, it's not leaving this video decided to buy or to lease. It's leaving decided to build margin before taking on any large commitment. It's leaving decided not to live under constant pressure. It's leaving decided to stop trading peace for appearances. If you made it this far, it means this doubt wasn't too superficial. It was loaded with emotion, fear, expectation. And if this content made sense to you, if it brought clarity, if it organized your thoughts, then do 3 simple things now. Hit like so more people experiencing this same anxiety can find this video. Subscribe to the channel because here we talk about money as it really is. With fear, guilt, pressure, but also with practical and possible solutions, and come into word control. So I know you stayed until the end and not starting today. Your priority isn't just having more things. It's having more peace of mind,